Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Lindsay, a member of the CK-12 team, and my colleague Katie and I will be running today's webinar called Customizing Practice. We're so glad that you've joined us. Before I introduce you to Katie, I want to do a quick reminder about Zoom. I think you guys are all becoming pros by now. You know that we have two different windows. One is for Q&A and one is for chat. In the Q&A window, please post any questions that you need our team to answer during this webinar. We'll answer a bunch of those live and do some demonstrations. And then we also have a team of CK-12 team members here to answer any questions via text as well. In the chat window, that's where we want you guys to keep doing what you're doing, which is introduce yourselves, talk about what you teach, where you're located, but do make sure that you've changed the menu option there to say all panelists and attendees. Sometimes you guys are just sending these messages to all panelists, and CK-12 is the only people who can see that, where I think you want to send it to all panelists and attendees so everybody in that chat window can see the conversation. Also, we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, but if you are having any trouble with video or sound, just let us know in one of those windows and we'll try to assist. So at this point, those of you who are joining us for this full program should be pretty clear about the details. Basically, you're taking 7 webinars and completing the matching assignments. This particular webinar is part of any customized or intelligent pathway, since it continues to discuss CK-12's adaptive practice, which is built using our intelligent system. For anyone who's joining us today and has any questions about the program, let us know. A reminder, our registration link is here. You can go to ck12.org/jumpstart. We do have more sessions, one this afternoon, and then a few more happening next week as well. You can always register. Also, our summer homepage is ck12.org/certified2017, which is available in the footer of any CK-12 page. When you click on Certified Educator Program, it's going to take you to that homepage that has information about all of our sessions, the assignments, and all of those archived videos. So right now, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Katie to get you started with customizing content with customizing practice.
Thanks, Lindsay, and thanks to everyone who joined us today for our session on customizing practice. In our Groups in Practice 101 session yesterday, and again before in June, we covered the basics of our adaptive practice system, along with groups and reports. If you missed that session, I highly encourage you to watch the recording of that session, just so that you get kind of the general overview as well as the nitty-gritty pieces from today. And in today's webinar, we're going to cover the following topics. We'll start with talking about customizing CK-12 practice into quizzes, so the kind of the difference between the two, and then settings and options for quizzes. We'll talk about creating your own questions and using the math editor. So if you want to add your own questions, we do have 150,000 questions in our database, but if you want to add to that, you're welcome to kind of write your own questions and use our editor to get math formatting the way that you might want it to be. And then the last thing we'll talk about is multi-concept assignments and reports. So kind of how this appears in reports, and also the idea of pulling assignments with different concepts that still have the adaptive component in there. So our main goal is that by the end of this session, you understand the difference between practice and quizzes, you can create your own customized assignments and questions, and you know what the reports would look like for each on CK-12.
But before we get into the core content of the webinar, it would be great to find out a little bit more about your knowledge of our practice tool and options for customizing practice. So we're launching a poll that you're seeing here on your screen. And here is the question. What experience do you have with customizing CK-12's adaptive practice into quizzes or using multi-concept assignments? And so if you want to look at those options and select your choice. All right, waiting for a few more of you to lock in your answers. And we're going to go ahead and end the poll. And here you go. Looks like the vast majority of you today are new to CK-12's adaptive practice. So again, like Katie said, hopefully you guys were able to take the Groups in Practice 101 session, because this one is going to go a little bit deeper into customization. So those of you who are familiar with adaptive practice already, 20% of you, 3% of you have customized. That's great too. So this is going to be a really good session, helping you to get what you need this adaptive practice system to do into the hands of your students.
So I think with that, we're going to move into talking about the difference between practice and quizzes. So we'll start with kind of the things that are for both of them. So both adaptive practice and quizzes can pull from that database of 150,000 plus questions, and that spans math, science, and some spelling questions. All of your practice and quizzes can be quick assigned from their page, so you could just assign that one easily to multiple classes or one particular class. The reports for those include time, level of questions, the answers students put in there. The actual practice and quizzes can be accessed online or via our practice app for students if they want to do that on a phone or a tablet. And then you can have hints available for students. They're automatically available in practice, and you can choose to leave them on or turn them off for your quiz options. So now let's kind of talk about the difference between them. So our adaptive practice system, which if you were in Groups in Practice you learned about, that adjusts to student skill level. So it offers recommendations such as reads, videos, clicks when they're struggling, or it kind of bumps them up to harder questions if they are doing well on that particular topic. And the goal of that practice is to get 10 correct for that concept. So that would give them a percentage of 100%, so they could do as much practice as they wanted, and that goal would be 10%. And they can come in and out of it. They can go in, they can practice it, they can leave, they can come back, and it will kind of pick up where they left off. So that tracks their progress as they work their way through. Quizzes, on the other hand, include specific questions. So you can choose to set a different number of questions and have the system automatically pick those questions, but it would pick them once and everyone would get kind of the same questions in there. You could choose the actual questions that you wanted to be in that particular quiz. If you don't want to use some of the practice questions in a particular concept, you could narrow that option and give them 10 specific ones or 20 specific ones or whatever that looks like. And that's where you can add your own questions as well. So you could put your own questions in a quiz that you made for your students. And then the report on that one is based on the total. So it's not a goal of 10, but if you had 25 questions and a student got 20 correct, then they would get the percentage based on that total amount. It wouldn't be, oh, I did 10 correct, even if there were 30 questions and I still got 100. In that case, they would get, a failing grade at that point in time. So you'd want to make sure to kind of adjust that and include what you wanted from there. And then quizzes, because some teachers do use them as quizzes, a student starts from the beginning and they have to work their way through and save it and submit it. It's not something that they can kind of come in and out of, because you wouldn't necessarily want them to be able to do that as you go from there. So I think with that, let's show you what this looks like. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go over to our homepage and kind of talk about where to find this, how to do this, and what that looks like. So the first thing that you can know is that you could start this process of customizing practice into quizzes by going into adaptive practice through our browse option. So if I click on adaptive practice here, excuse me, and then I pick on a topic, let's say algebra, and then I could pick on a particular topic here. So you can see in the browse option for adaptive practice, it includes kind of the percentages of students as they work their way through. But if I picked any particular topic like this one, as a teacher, I see the option to customize that practice right here. So I could click the customize option here. And that's one option just right above that time spent. You'll see that plus customize right next to your download worksheet. So that's one way to get to the customize option. I could get to the same customize option if I was back on my home page and I was just browsing either through browse or through search, and I went to that particular concept page. So if I went to the same concept page here, so you can see here's my list of concepts. Partway down, I have the same topic This brings me to my concept page. It has our different modalities, reads, videos, practice. And if I went into the practice option right here, on the left side here, you'll see the option to customize right under the Share to Groups feature. You'll see I mentioned that Quick Assign to Class option right up here, kind of on the left part in that bright orange Assign to Class option. But right now we're going to focus on customizing. So whether I'd clicked the Customize button through Practice Browse or from right here, it will take me, pop up this screen, kind of say, you're going to make a quiz. Okay, I got that part, and it takes me to my quiz page. So here are kind of your options for customizing this quiz. So I'm going to say this is a demo for July 13th, just so I can track what I'm working on. I could put a description if I wanted to kind of quickly remember all the pieces that I'd put in this quiz. And then if I was just going to save this, I could create this quiz, go from there. You know, it just picked some settings, did all the rest of it. I could preview it, but as soon as I am done creating a quiz, I can always find my quizzes in my library. So if I go to my library, which is right up at the top with that little backpack icon, you can now see that quiz in here. So whether or not I had saved it or I'd gone through it, notice because you made it, you can always edit that content. So I'm going to click Edit, and I'm going to go back in and edit this some more, and we can kind of talk about some other options. But just remember, anything that you create or customize on our site, once you've saved that as a customized version, you can find it in your library. So let's talk about kind of the options. We changed the title up here, so you got that piece there. We have an option for number of attempts. So remember, the difference between quizzes and practice mean that practice is unlimited. Students can keep working their way through. They can try it as much as they want. They can get, you know, that goal of 10 correct. A quiz, you might only want a student to be able to access once or twice. So in that case, you're going to set it to be 1 or 2 time limits. And that's where they have 1 or 2 chances to go in, start from the beginning, work their way through the quiz, and submit that quiz. If you're using it more like practice, then you might want to choose the unlimited option where they can just go back in and practice it as they go through. So that's one option for a quiz that's not available kind of to specify within practice. Another piece is you could set a time limit. So this is for the entire quiz. So I could set a time limit of, let's say I want them to do the whole quiz in 1 class block time. So that would be, you know, 60 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever that looks like. And so you could set that, or you could go back and you could set it as unlimited and say, I don't care how long it takes them to work their way through, but we're going to go from there. So the other options for quizzes, you'll see the show hints option. Those are automatically shown in practice, and you could choose to leave them on for a quiz, or you could turn them off and not have students see those hints as they're working their way through. The solution option is after they submit it, they could see the solution for how that would be worked. Right now, you'll see those available in practice for our elementary math content. And I know our high school and middle school math content is working on building out those solutions. So you may see those down the road. And then this is a great option, this shuffle questions option right here on the right. If you want students to have the same questions, but you don't necessarily want them in the same order so that they're not answering the same questions at the same time, that's an option to shuffle the questions where every student would still get the 20 questions we've selected so far, but they would get them in a different order. And that might help alleviate some of the like, oh, what did you get for question number 3 kind of conversations if you're worried about that. So that's kind of your basic settings for the quiz as a whole. So the next piece is to talk about the options for questions within and actually picking your questions. So the first thing you can do is on this number 20, you can see these up and down arrow options. And if I click down, I can say, okay, maybe I only want 15 questions for my students to do. And then if I click outside of it, it's going to say, please note, if you're changing the number here, you're changing any other settings for that. So it's going to regenerate 15 random questions when you do that. So that's okay. I haven't changed anything. I'm fine kind of starting with the 15. Or you might say, ooh, I did a lot of other work on there. I don't want it to pick 15 random questions. So in that case, I would kind of cancel out and go from there. Now, this just simply pulled 15 out of this is a kind of big topic, and standard topic in algebra, so we have over 400 questions for this particular topic. But it just pulled 15 random ones from there. If I want to actually pick the questions, I can click Edit. And that little pencil icon edit option is the same edit that you'll see across our site. And what that will do is it'll load a number of the questions. So it picks kind of the top 200 to work from as you're going from there. And from here, you can see medium level difficulty, easy difficulty. You can see the types of questions here. So the first couple are multiple choice, then short answer, kind of different options as you go through. There's a true false here. If you wanted to see the actual question, the whole question, these little arrow options will expand that. And then I can actually see, oh, this question says fill in the missing sign, and it makes sense that your options, if you're doing adding or subtracting, would be plus or minus. So a student could do there. You could even see the hints that were available for that. So let's see, it says you must perform the necessary operations. And you're kind of going through there, and that gives you the option. So from here, you can choose to reorder this. And actually, the reordering option isn't showing up right now because I chose to shuffle my questions. So if I saved this for a second, and I unclicked the shuffle question option, and then I went back into edit, now you have the option to say, okay, well, I'm choosing the order these questions appear in, so I can actually drag and change this order of this question and put them in the order I want. I can go in, I can say, I don't really want that question. I do actually want this question. And you can pick and choose and drag them wherever you'd like them to be in the order. So in that case, let's say I pick one less and I save this. Now you'll see that there are 14 questions here that I've handpicked as I went through there. And so if I was going to change this number and then click outside, I actually picked those questions, so I don't want to randomly have it generate again. So I'm going to just cancel that out and say, nope, I want the 14 questions I picked, or I could go back in and handpick some other ones as I went through there. So that's kind of the options for the topic that you started customizing. If you wanted to include other concepts as well, you could click this plus sign, and I could say, let's add something else on numerical expression. And then I could search for that. And let's maybe add some of these questions from here. So you'll see this create new question option at the top, and we'll go into that in the next part as well. But from here, I could just add these topics in here. It's going to default to picking 20 to start. I could change that again. Let's say maybe only 10 of these. Click outside, it will start saving it. Or I could do the same thing again and click this pencil icon here and edit it from there. And that would pop me into the questions, and I could pick and choose these questions. Now, one thing to note, if let's say I wanted these questions to show up first, if you hover over the number, so right now it's saying this batch is number 1, this batch is number 2, you get those drag arrow options right over the number, and I can reorder it and have this topic show up first and then that topic. So just know that kind of, just like you might in a quiz where you were grouping similar questions, it'll group those questions based on the concepts you include, but you can reorder those groupings as you work your way through, or you can choose to shuffle your questions as you go. So we're going to talk about kind of the adding your own questions in the next set, but hopefully that gives you the general overview of what that looks like, and then you can kind of see where that goes.
All right, we've got some questions that have come in. I'm going to try to bucket these a little bit. Kind of one set of questions I think was still trying to decipher the difference between how adaptive practice functions versus how a quiz functions. So a little bit of confusion on if these are pulling from the same question bank. Is it possible that students would be completing adaptive practice and then they would also be getting the same questions on a quiz based on how the quiz has been generated?
Yeah, so they do pull from the same database of questions. So a student might or might not have seen them if they were doing both the adaptive practice and the quiz and a quiz for the same concept area. That's a case where if you're worried about them kind of re-seeing the same exact question, then you might want to create your own questions when you're building your quiz. But if you say, well, it's kind of okay if they see some. In this particular case, there were 400 questions for this topic, so They probably aren't going to all see the same exact ones when they're doing practice and quizzes, but there is kind of a variety of amounts of questions. Some of our newer topics have closer to 10 or 20. Other ones that have been where our core starting concepts have significantly more questions. So they would still see some of those overlaps, and that's where the next part of this session, where we talk about creating your own questions, might be useful for you. So you could build your own quiz with your own questions and not have that overlap. But the other kind of that answers the yes, could they see those questions again? The biggest difference I would say between a quiz and adaptive practice is the idea that a quiz, you chose either by generating a specific set kind of automatically through our system, or by hand picking those questions. You set 15, 20, I think you have max out at 100 questions for a quiz, but you set a specific set of questions for that, and every student that gets that assigned quiz will get the same exact questions. Whereas every student who does practice for a concept, based on how they're doing, will be offered up harder questions, easier questions, recommendations, kind of all of those adaptive pieces, whereas a quiz is a fixed set of questions that when you're assigning the same exact questions to every student in that class. So that's probably the biggest difference between them.
Okay, a couple of questions about shuffling. When I choose the option to shuffle questions, does it mean that each student will receive a different set of questions, or will they receive the common set in a different order?
So that shuffling is simply the order. Once again, for adaptive practice, they get served up different questions based on how they are doing and what kind of level they're working at. For a quiz, they're served up the same exact questions, but they show up in a different order if you choose that shuffle option.
So follow up to that is there a way for students to get different questions from each other? Would you need to generate multiple quizzes? How would you get kids different quizzes?
So if you wanted them to get different questions from each other in practice, then the system, based on how they're doing, would probably take care of a chunk of that already. If you're looking for a quiz, you would either need to make a couple different quizzes, or when we get into the creating question type, I can show you how to create a question that includes kind of different numbers when it generates. So that would be an option. That's a newer option on our system. So most of our questions don't auto-generate new numbers in there, but you could create ones that would do that.
We had a couple questions about kind of the bank that you were pulling up earlier. So if there were 400 questions available on a certain concept, is there any way to sort that view? We have one user asking to sort by type. Another was talking about difficulty level, modality. Do we have any view options at the moment?
So at this time, there isn't necessarily a way to sort that. There is kind of a quick way to see what those are. So once again, let's pick one that has probably a more standard option. There might be like 40 questions in here. So you can skim this pretty quickly just by scanning down and saying, oh, multiple choice, true, false. These are all medium. Those are some easy short answer ones. So you can skim that and pick and choose. And then if you were trying to kind of put them all together, let's say I pick some of these right off the bat that are further down, so see how there's a big break in terms of the questions that I picked. If I go up at the top and save this, and then go back into it again, you'll see that it's grouped all the questions I picked right up at the top. So that's one option to kind of pull a bunch together. But in terms of like sorting them, because you are choosing the order that you picked in here, there's not necessarily a way, like you could sort this way kind of in multiple choice and put those together, but then you'll have your questions kind of scattered as you go through. So choose yes in terms of like the pieces that you're working off of, but it won't necessarily, if it's more than 200, it won't necessarily serve all of those up, except when you're kind of choosing your multiple choice pieces.
Okay, I think some of the next questions seem to be about creating your own questions, and we've got a question that I think you're going to answer here in a second about when you make your own questions, is everybody able to see them? So Katie, maybe now's a good time to go back to doing some demonstrating on creating questions, and then you all keep the questions coming in Q&A, please, while we go through this.
Sure. So once again, kind of when you're in a particular topic, so let's say I wanted to add questions to this topic of numerical expression, I can go in and I can edit that. And then I can, up here it says add a question. And by adding a question, you're really adding your own question to this particular piece. And so the thing that you should know right now is your questions are available for you to use in your quizzes. Technically, you submitted them to our database, and so we could pull them up again. You're not going to want to add questions that you pulled from somewhere that you paid for them, for example. If you're adding stuff, anything to our site at any point, whether it's in our practices or in our books itself, you want to make sure that you have the rights to use that and add it to our system, because everything is under the same copyright. But you can make your own questions up pretty easily and add them in here. And at this point in time, they're available for you to use. And then we could talk about kind of making them available down the line. But right now, they show up as options within your own quiz. So the first thing you're going to want to think about is, what type of question do I want to make? So if I click on here, you can see our number of options. So multiple choice questions are pretty straightforward. Select all that apply are multiple choice, where a user could choose more than one answer. So it might be something where let's say you're talking about different types of animals or something like that, and saying, okay, which of the following are all animals, which don't classify as animals in a science class, so they could pick more than one answer option. For true false, you'll see here, it now gives you the true false options here, but I can actually change this to be kind of either answer, so I could put something else in there if I wanted to do that. It didn't have to be true false. It's really kind of a two-choice option as you're building from there. If you do short answer, your short answer options, and that's just saying it's going to clear my answer choices because it's changing the type of question. For short answers, you max out at 3 distinct words. So just remember that you're not looking for sentences that our system can't read. It's really a short answer, like a 1 or 2 tops 3 word answer that you're looking for. And this is a case where, let's say I could say the answer was 5, and I might also want to put it as a number. So I could add, what I just did there was this little add an alternate correct answer option. So you can add more than one answer that would work out there, if more than one you think would be relevant for your question type. Similarly, I could go down here and do fill in the blanks, and it's going to change it again. And the difference between fill in the blanks and short answer is, I could say the boy went to the store, and in here I would actually add that answer, and then a student would see a blank there instead of at the end, so that kind of I picked that piece. So in order to do that, I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to add an answer using that answer option. And maybe my directions say, fill in the nouns. And actually, that's probably not a great choice, because there could be 1,000 different nouns that went in there. But maybe you need some more context with a word bank or something like that. Is it case sensitive? It currently is not case sensitive, so it's not that it's going to ask for your kind of uppercase or lowercase piece. So just know that part there. It is spelling sensitive, so if you wanted to make sure that, like, let's say you were in a science class and you had some very technical science term, and you know that kids often misspell it a different way, you may want to add that as an alternate answer for that question. So those are kind of your options for fill in the blanks and short answer. Drag and drop is a categorizing option. So let me show you what that looks like. So we're going to change this one more time. So if we go to drag and drop, I could, actually that's probably a great option from here. So I might choose here, and I might say my first category is nouns. And my second category would be verb. And so let's go from here. And then I could drag in my nouns from here. I could drag in my verb from here. Now this isn't necessarily going to match that same type, But then a student would be given these categories, and they would actually drag those answers into that particular piece. So that's a categorizing option. If we were looking from here, we could also look at the highlighting option, which would be very similar. So once again, just changing this question type. And I could say, this would be a case where kind of highlighting the nouns might be helpful. So highlight the nouns. And then a student would want to highlight those 2 words. One thing you should know about highlighting is that highlighting is at the word or groups of words level. So I can't just highlight the T in the word store, because it's just too hard for students to kind of select that letter and drag it over and go from there. So once they click on that word, it highlights the whole word or the whole group of words that you put together. So just know that piece. So kind of all sorts of different options. And if you have questions about specific ones, we can go into some more of those as we go through there. But those are definitely choices. And then the last kind of type is your discussion type. And this is a case where really the answer is kind of discuss with others. So this is a case where none of the answer choices are incorrect. And what that means is you could put kind of a general question in something like this and have students answer on paper, have them answer in a forum, have them answer in Q&A in your group, all sorts of different options as they work their way through. But that allows you to ask some of those more open-ended questions where our system can't grade the level of response that you're looking for from there. So let's go back and pick a question that might actually match within here. So we were talking about numerical expression. So I'm going to say something like evaluate -3, and I could do this like this, -3 squared, and then let's go back down, and then -4. So that's one option. I could actually put that in there. If I wanted to format this, I could also use our math editor, and you'll find our math editor both here in the practice tool and in our Flexbook piece under this little X and curly braces. And if I click that, then I can start putting in other pieces. And the math editor allows you to use a drop-down option. So I can click in here and I can say, okay, I want something that's squared. So I want X squared, or maybe I wanted, instead of that, I actually wanted something else that included a different thing to a power. So here I can say, okay, I want -3 squared. And I could put those pieces in there. And you'll start seeing the code kind of populate down here. If you know LaTeX coding, you're welcome to actually just use this yourself. But if you want to use different pieces in our drop-down option, here's your operations. You'll see logs, limits. So just take a few minutes to explore what's available here. And you can kind of go through that piece. And then you'll see if I preview this, right now it's saying X squared -3 squared. So notice that it didn't automatically put in those parentheses. So if I need to put in those parentheses, I'm going to want to make sure that I want the parentheses in there. Maybe I don't want any of this stuff, so I'm actually going to just eliminate this. And here's the trick. If you start playing with the code, you lose the drop-down option. So that drop-down option is a one-directional thing that generates code. But if you know your coding, go ahead and by all means go ahead and change that. But just know that that's kind of what you're working with. And then I could do -4 here. Inline, we'll put it wherever it is within your text. Align at would put it on a new line on the left-hand side. And if you wanted to center an equation, your block math, as you can see right here, if I click block math, will center it. And there's little pop-up things that tell you kind of what's happening there. I'm going to choose inline, and then I can add it directly into the line of this text. And then maybe I'm not going to even use that. So I'm just going to say evaluate this. And then you can do the same thing. Here are your answer choices. So the first one I'm picking here, I'm going to want to be the correct answer. I can add in, let's say, some other maybe common mistakes that students might make with this particular question. And if I wanted to not randomize it, I wanted to actually put them in a specific order, then I could choose to say, okay, well, here's my right answer. I want it to show up third. If you did that and then I randomized it, it would have that question correct. But if you need to choose a different answer in the order, then it usually defaults to kind of that first answer you're putting in. And then I'm randomizing it so it shows up in any order I want. So as you do that, If you go down below, you could enter a full solution if you wanted to see them. You could add in a hint that says, don't forget to square your negative, kind of all options in there, and then you can pick your level. It's tagged to the concept that you wanted it to be in. If you wanted to do another one, you could add that in. But once you submit this, you'll see this question show up at the end. So if you've been in any of our Flexbook pieces, anytime you add something to a Flexbook, it shows up at the end. Anytime you add something to a quiz, it's showing up at the end. This is a CK-12 account, so it's showing up as CK-12, but if you wrote this question, it would actually have your username right here, so you could tell which ones you'd created. And notice I also have the ability to edit this because I've created this particular question myself. And I could preview it there or earlier on, and you can see, okay, here's my question, here are my answer choices, here's my hint, and I can include that question in there. So that's a way to kind of add in different pieces, add in your own questions from there. I'm going to go in and I'm going to add one more. So we're going to save this piece. I'm going to show you one other thing because I know we had a lot of questions. If I want to add a question set, I could create new questions from here as well. And we had some questions about creating something that had different numbers in it. So let's say I wanted to do the same thing, but I wanted different numbers in there. So evaluate, and then I can add a variable. So over here is the option to add a variable. So I'm going to call this variable X for right now. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to choose from a set. So let's say I want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see I could do a range of values instead if I wanted anything from 1 to 10, with an interval of 1. I could add those in there. And then you'll see now I have a variable here that I can drag in. I could say I want X, and then I want X squared, and then I want to do minus, and I want to add some other number in there. So we're going to call this Y just so I can keep track of it. And let's say we're going to make this a 2, 3, or 4. Okay, so once I do that, then you'd want to say, okay, well, now I need to make sure that the answer is something that makes sense. So I would have to basically square the X, subtract the Y, and kind of get a piece that showed up there. So when you're building it, you want to make sure that you can come up with an answer that says like X, or that includes X. Maybe it's 2 times X or something like that. But you could also do another variable here if you didn't want to do that, where you could say, okay, I actually need a variable that is calculated. And you could create a calculation that's like, okay, we're going to call this Z, and then Z is a set that's based on the other piece. So that's one option. And this is kind of like the super high level, crazy detailed power user version. If you really wanted to create your own questions with all of these variables, we have a database of 150,000 questions. You do not need to create your own questions. So I'm actually just going to go back out of this. You can use our questions as is. You can have the system randomly pick questions. You could go in and you could edit your own questions and pick and choose specific ones. You could create your own questions, or you could even create questions with variables. But those are all kind of like next level, next level, next level. If you are new to practice, I recommend you just start using it kind of at that general level to start till you're familiar with it, and then think about kind of those higher levels and what you could do from there.
All right, so if somebody adds in their own questions, is that automatically available for everybody else to see?
No, at this point in time, your questions live in your database. So in here, I was adding a question right here. And at the bottom, you can see I still have the ability to edit it because I created this particular question. That's available in my question bank kind of as an added bonus to my question. Right now, that's not currently available to others. You do still need to create questions and adding questions that you have rights to, because in the event that we made those available in the future, you'd need to make sure that it was still kind of working within that license. And even if they weren't available outside of that, our license accounts for anything under that Creative Commons non-commercial attribution license. So you'd want to make sure that you had the rights to add those to our system. But you currently are the only one that can see those. You could share this quiz. So let's say I'm going to go back for a second, and I am going to go from here, and I can share this quiz to a group, or I could share via the ShareAplane, and then another teacher could kind of assign that particular quiz to someone else. So if you as a department made a bunch of quizzes, then the different teachers could assign those to their class, but those questions would live in one place where you could edit them. They wouldn't transfer to multiple accounts.
What about the ability to print? Can you print the quiz and administer in traditional desktop setting?
Yes, you can print your quizzes. So you could see when we looked at the adaptive practice right next to that practice in the browse option, next to the customize option was a way to download it. If you're in a modality page like this page with all of those different what we call modalities or types of learning options at the top, so reads, videos, etc. Under these three dots right here, you'll see the option to download the PDF, download an HTML version of it, or even embed it. So here's your print option. You can download the PDF and print it. If you wanted to embed it, here's your embed code, and that embed code would allow you to embed this in one of our Flexbooks, just like you would embed a video, or in some other place that allows you to embed content. So that's a great option as well. But you can definitely download that PDF and print it from here, or if I show you kind of from that browse option for practice itself, if I go into adaptive practice and I pick a particular topic, you can see here as a teacher, I can both customize it and download this worksheet.
Okay. I'm going to steal the screen back for a minute, and I want to show you just a quick example. We've been highlighting different teachers and how they are using our system. As part of our 10th anniversary, we were traveling around the country and seeing different use cases. So I want to show you one of our teachers named Jonathan Waters, who's a teacher in El Paso School District, and he's going to talk about how he uses quizzes in his classroom.
So the practice, and especially now with some of the updates, has become more adaptive to where the students are working on different questions. The more questions they get right, they seem to get more challenging. You know, I've noticed as I go around help kids, question number 5 for one student is not question number 5 for another student. And as a teacher, it benefits me because it challenges the students to their level. I think I had a student earlier talk about how it's kind of adjusted to her and it kind of keeps her engaged. And then also, too, it helps me kind of see where these students are at. And then the quizzes I attach to the practices that come from that question bank, those tend to use the same questions for every student. But then again, at the same time, the real-time feedback is something I like, too. So the kids, they take the test, they know immediately what their grade is. They don't have to wait for me to grade a paper, grade an assignment, and then on top of that, they can go back and review and see, okay, I'm missing these types of questions, or I'm doing well on the medium type of questions, but I'm missing the hard questions. And so if they choose to, they can even go back to the practice and kind of work their way back to some of those harder questions.
If you want to see more of our users talk about how they are using CK-12 in their classroom, we do have a new testimonials page. That's ck12.org/testimonials, or it's at the bottom in your footer on any ck12.org page. So to keep going with customizing practice, we're now going to talk about multi-concept assignments and reports. So in Groups in Practice 101, we talked about how to quick assign practice or other modalities to any CK-12 group. Today, we're going to show you how to build a multi-concept assignment or include practice and quizzes within the same assignment. So multi-concept assignments or assignments with practice and quizzes create from within CK-12 class groups. Students access from Practice app and or within groups. And students can choose order to complete. Now, with your reports for assignments in multi-parts, you can split into multi-parts. Each part is based on the type of assignment, and practice is based on 10 correct, quizzes on percentage right. So Katie's going to break all of this down for you now in her demonstration. I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. As Lindsay said, we're going to talk about doing these multiple concept pieces here. So we've shown you that quick assign option throughout our content. So let me share my screen for a second. And if I share this, this is our browse. So this would just be the practice option. But if we were back in any core content area, you can see the option to quick assign content. So if I picked on, let's say, physical science, for example, and picked a topic in there, I could pick the read, and I could quick assign this read using that bright orange assign to class option. So whatever pages you're working on, our reads, our videos, our practice, quizzes, plics, simulations, you'll see an assign to class option. If I click on that, it quick assigns. It just takes what's there and assigns it to my class. It doesn't include multiple components. It doesn't include multiple pieces. So if I wanted to, just like in the quiz that I made, and I had a couple different topics in there, those ones, I picked the specific questions or I set a specific limit to them. If I wanted to include more of that adaptive component within there, I could create a multi-concept assignment from within my groups feature. So up here we have this dashboard, we have our groups option. So from here, I would go in and I would say, okay, let's build one in our program page for the summer. And if I'm looking at my assignments, so I went into my group. If you're brand new, you may have one or two groups. I have a whole bunch, but right now I went into the group I want to work with. And I'm going to click on my assignments option on the left here. And then you can see a couple of things. One, you'll see that any assignments I've made for other groups in here, I have the ability to assign to this group as well. If I wanted to change it at all, I would need to make a new assignment. But if I wanted to just use the same assignment across multiple groups, I could assign that pretty easily by just clicking on the assign option right here and having it show up in this piece. If I wanted to create a new assignment, I would click on this orange create an assignment button at the top right. So create an assignment. And then I'm going to pick some concepts to work off of. So you can browse through your content, or you can click on this little magnifying glass on the right, and you can start searching. So let's pick kind of a science topic, mass, matter, volume. We're talking about different components. So we could do this in physical science, let's say if I was teaching that. And you could say all concepts and quizzes, you just want concepts with practice. So right now I'm going to stick with the ones that have that adaptive practice component. So I can select that, and you can see that it showed up right here on the right. I could then say, okay, I want to add another concept. Maybe I want them to have more practice with volume. So let's see what else we have. I could do kind of general volume questions. So volume of sphere, cylinders, maybe we were talking about cylinders. So I could add that piece as well. So that would be a kind of component. And now I have two practice pieces in here. I can also, if you look up at the top right, right before the save option, you see this plus sign to add a quiz to this assignment. So at that point in time, I could say add something, and you'll see two options. You'll see any quiz that I have made in my system. So maybe I want to add the one I made today. Or I could click on this, create a new quiz up at the top, and create a new quiz, and then go ahead and add it into this assignment. But now you'll see I have two different concepts and a quiz added into this assignment. If I wanted to add any other ones, I could do that as well. And when I'm done, I'm going to save this assignment. So I'm going to make a name, demo assignment for July 13th. And I'm going to save that assignment. Okay, and once I'm all done and it's saved, I can go back into my option from there. You'll notice when I was saving it, it kind of gave me the option to assign some pieces. But if I went in here, you'll now see this demo assignment for July 13th here. And I can expand this a bit and say, okay, these little light bulb things tell me I have adaptive practice. The little guy with the gears tells me that's a quiz. So, and it says the same thing here, 2 concepts and 1 quiz. And I could assign that to my members. I could pick a due date or not, either way. I could edit this some more, or I could delete this assignment. So all options to work off of. When I assign that to my class, it says, great, I can assign that piece. The students have the ability to answer any of those parts. So if I looked at that again, they could do this in any order. They see all 3 parts, and they could choose to do it in the order you put it in, or they could work on the volume part first, and then the matter part, and then the quiz at the end. So they're all grouped together as an assignment, but they could kind of mix and match the order in which they did it. So now I want to talk about kind of what that looks like in your reporting system. So we're going to go over to reports for a second. And right now I have 2 assignments for this particular class. The one I just made today, so nobody's done that work yet, not surprisingly. And then one that we made beforehand just to show you what it looks like. So if I went into this particular assignment, you can see 3 different parts. One is defining chemistry, mass, matter, and volume, and then chapter 1 quiz. Now let's go out for 1 second. I just want you to see, if we go back to our little home option and we look at that assignment for a second. If we looked at this particular assignment, you can see that there are 2 concepts in 1 quiz. So the chapter 1 quiz is a concept, or is a quiz, and the other ones are adaptive practice pieces. And so let's look at what that assignment looks like specifically. So within there, you can see these are all going to be in percentages of 10s because their goal is 10 correct. So every time they get 1 correct, they're bumping up. So it looks like Ryan worked partway through it, but he hasn't finished hitting his goal of 10 correct. The other students have hit that. And then you'll see their percentages based on the total number of questions. So here you're going to get kind of a little bit more variety in numbers because it will be based on the number correct out of the total number, and that will give you your percentage. A reminder that if you had assigned any of our other modality types kind of as separate quick assign options, then they'll show up as complete or incomplete. But our adaptive practice shows up with out of the goal of 10 correct, and your quiz shows up here. And I could go into any one of these particular areas, or I could go into a particular student and see how they were doing. And you'll see here the same deal. They haven't started this first one. They have these different options over here. So let's look at maybe this concept on defining chemistry. And just like there would be if I did a single assignment in the report, it includes the number correct, the streak that they worked off, the time spent. So it looks like he's barely even started this really at this point in time. And it looks like I pulled up the quiz there. So there's the kind of the topic. Here's my concept that I'm working within, that defining chemistry. And then I got 1 easy question right, but I was kind of struggling here, or he was. And you can see they clicked that correct. It looks like it actually pulled a couple other ones in there. So one thing you should know is that it's going to lock in kind of what they did before the due date if you set a due date. So that's a little bit tricky in terms of make sure students, if you're setting a due date, are completing it before then so that their percentage matches what they're working off of. So know that piece, but you definitely can check out that piece. If I go back to the assignment as a whole, I could look at the mass, matter, and volume part, and you can see they're pulling up. Oh, it looks like those are mix match. So we'd kind of go into there. And he may have made 1 particular piece in there. So, and then the quiz itself, if we look here, it includes all of these different concepts. It still gives you the information about correct, streak, he skipped any questions, the time he spent, and then you can see the answers that are in there as well. So options for creating a quiz with specific questions or creating an assignment that has adaptive practice components for parts of it or all of it, but still includes multiple concepts as you're working your way through.
Katie, that was obviously a lot of information, and some of it is very specific and technical and things like that, depending on how advanced you guys want to be with making these quizzes. But so Katie, what are your words of encouragement to, a couple of our users? You're saying that they're a little overwhelmed. This is tough. As they get in and start to try to do this on their own, what resources are we providing to assist them?
So the first thing I would say is, if you are brand new to CK-12's adaptive practice, then my recommendation, if I just go back to the homepage, is that you just use our quick assign option. That's the simplest option. you pick your topic, you go into that topic. So let's say scientific problem solving. You pick any of these modalities and you use the quick assign option. You use this assign to class option in the top left. So that is step one. Start with that, see how kids are doing, see what's happening. This is kind of that customizing advanced practice class that we're talking about. But if you haven't done any of the work kind of on using groups in practice kind of with that quick assign piece, then I would recommend starting with that. And then once you get familiar with that, you can come back and watch this recording. Or you can always check out up in the top right here is our help desk. So if you click on that help desk, and then you say, okay, I'm a teacher, I'm gonna work through here. And then there's information on using groups for classes. And then there's information on practice and quizzes. And those would be great resources when you're getting at that kind of advanced piece. You will need the groups part to start, just so you have a place to track your student progress. But kind of all of this, creating quizzes, advanced editing for quizzes, that's really what we were talking about today. And that's something that when you get to that point, then I would recommend rewatching this recording and going in and checking out these kind of, if you look at it here, they're just kind of quick help. Here, these are the things you select and choose from. And so that might be a great resource for you when you get to that point after you've done some of the basic pieces as you go through that.
And of course, our team is here to support you, whether it's during this program or during the school year. So as you guys are trying this out, as you have questions, you can always email support@ck12.org, and we're here to help you be successful with this. So I'm going to steal the screen back and talk about your assignment and a little bit of wrap-up information. And then we're going to stay on and we're going to answer any questions that you guys have. But as you know, if you are looking to get certified, we do need you to complete an assignment to go with your attendance in this webinar. So for this assignment, we're asking you about this idea of adaptive practice first quizzes, creating questions, and then advanced assignments and reports. You can find this assignment at thetinyurl.com, CEP 17 quizzes. It has just been put out in the chat window. You're also going to find any of your assignments on our Certified Educator Program page at Certified 2017, or when you click on Certified Educator Program in the footer of any CK-12 page, you would just go to the session that you attended and expand that session option, and you'll see some help resources, a session description, and you're going to see the link to that assignment. You're also going to find archived videos there. It does take us about 24 hours to get the record of this webinar up to YouTube and get it on the web page. So just give us 24 hours or so to turn that around. You'll be receiving follow-up emails from us that also have links to your assignments and to the archived videos. Some upcoming sessions that you might consider. This afternoon, we are talking about this idea of practice in groups again, talking about it though in the context of how you might actually use this with students. So we have our colleague Ryan in today to give you some teaching strategies of how you might, moving beyond how to customize, but how to actually use this in an integrated fashion with your students. So I'd encourage you to attend this afternoon. We also, Monday, we have CK-12 and learning management systems. So for all of you who have a learning management system at your school, popular ones are like Canvas and Edmodo and Schoology. This is a session that would really benefit you. If you're a user who maybe you're not using a learning management, it might not be as meaningful of a session for you to attend. Advanced Flexbook editing is going beyond Flexbook 101 to talking about kind of what Katie was demonstrating with some of our math editor. We're going to talk about embedding multimedia, all that kind of stuff. So join us next week as we continue with the program. And you can register for anything at ck12.org Jumpstart if you need to. And then we always ask for feedback. This is not an assignment, but we would love to get your feedback. This is the same link all summer long, CEP 2017 feedback. Please let us know how we're doing and how we can continue to make improvements to this program. And then, like I said, support@ck12.org is a great place to email if you need any assistance. And then on social media, it'd be great if you followed or joined in other educators networking on Facebook and Twitter at CK12 Foundation or hashtag CK12 Foundation. So for those of you who need to sign off, we have reached that hour mark. You're welcome to go ahead and sign off today, but we're going to continue to answer questions for the next little bit here. So I'm going to kick it back over to Katie.
Thanks, Lizzie. So I'm going to answer one kind of general question that I think ties directly in, and then maybe we'll go back into my screen for a second after that. But the first question is, can I make a generic quiz, for example, as an exit ticket with the same questions and reuse it over and over again? So you could reassign that. Students would, if they've answered it, it would show as complete if you assigned it beforehand. So that would be kind of one thing that I would recommend thinking about as you do that. The other thing is that, a lot of exit tickets I know that I used in my class were a little more open-ended, so that might not be the right forum. If you were using the discussion question types in there, then that might be something that a student could kind of look at. But I would be careful about it showing as complete in the same way, because if they've done it already, they would need to kind of look at that from there. So that's just something you could try out and see if the system does what you're looking for it to do, but there may be some kind of logistical pieces that would make that a little bit more difficult. We had a question about kind of creating your own stuff. So if I when I made those questions in here, so when I was actually working and I, went into here, let's go to the assessment. As soon as I went into that create your own question option here and I was building my questions, if you submit one, you do get a thanks for adding this to the question bank email and that it's being reviewed. As we noted, it's not automatically getting put in our question bank, because if we did choose to kind of pull those questions in, we would be reviewing them for just that reason that I often, even in demoing, if you noticed I was making a random English example in there. So we don't automatically add them to the larger question bank. They are now available for review, that we could add them in the future, but don't worry that if you made kind of a made up question or that it's tagged to the wrong EID, or to the wrong concept, that's an issue, because we would definitely check that before we release that into our larger question bank. And then we had a question, let me go back for a second to kind of the modality. So right here, you can see different modality types. You can see a read, a video, our practice assessment, and a real world application. This ability to assign to class more than just our practice and quizzes is actually one of our newer features this year. And so at this point in time, you would have to individually assign them, because you'd assign the read and it would show up as complete or incomplete, whether or not they'd accessed it. You'd assign the video and the same deal there. And then this practice assessment would be that percentage out of 10 correct. And so you'd be working kind of through that piece, and you'd want to say, so the answer to that is that at this point in time, you do need to assign those separately. If I went into that group option and I can assign practice and quizzes together, but I can't assign kind of the other modalities that go with it at this point, basically because it's a newer component. So hopefully that answers your question, maybe not the way you want it at this point, but you can kind of assign those as you work your way through.
Okay, we're going to see if any additional questions come in the next few seconds here. There's one. Can you assign specific read pieces from a Flexbook you have created?
Yes, you can definitely do that. So if I go into my library and I pull up, I'm going to filter in my library. These filter options are amazing. They're super helpful to kind of pull things together. So I'm going to filter and pull up some Flexbooks. I actually was building this Flexbook demo for yesterday on July 12th. So I can open that book and I can assign, notice that you can't actually assign the entire book, because no student's going to be able to read the whole book as a single assignment. So you'd want to go in and you'd want to pick the level of a read. So if I go into a particular section, so let's say characteristics of sound, I'll see the option to assign that to my class. And that works the same way both within our system and for any learning management system like Schoology or Canvas, where you can assign sections. You actually have to assign at the read level, because that would be the individual thing that they would be checking and doing and looking at, as opposed to saying, hey, do this whole book in one shot. So definitely, whether it's your Flexbook or one of our Flexbooks or from our concept page, you can assign at the read level.
Okay, so in the absence of any additional questions here, we're going to go ahead and sign off. We hope to see you guys back on later today. Thank you, everyone.